Howdy, Patriots. Duke Dallas here, coming at you from the heart of Texas, where the stars are bright, the whiskey's neat, and the truth ain't always pretty. Welcome to Unfettered Ideas, where we love this country too much to swallow the lies. Now, before we get rolling, I gotta tell you, I'm a retired war vet from Texas, proud of our American spirit, and I'm here to cut through the smoke and mirrors. Today we're taking a hard look at the newly released JFK assassination files and breaking down the 5 big new revelations I've uncovered. So grab a cup of Joe, sit back, and let's get to the truth. All right, folks, let me set the stage. Many years back, we all got our hands on a set of documents that promised answers. And, well, a whole lot of questions. Now, with the latest batch of files hitting the public domain, it's time to re-examine what we thought we knew about that fateful November day in Dallas. Irony, right? I'm talking about the details behind the JFK assassination, the murky crossroads of Cold War paranoia, government secrets, and yes, conspiracies that have haunted our history. I've been digging through these files like I've been digging through battle reports, and let me tell you, there's a lot more than meets the eye. In today's show, I'm going to break down 5 major revelations that have come to light. These revelations not only challenge the old narrative, but also give us a glimpse into how the powers that be handled, if not hidden, the truth from the American people. First off, the documents reveal a whole new layer of detail about the motorcade's security protocol. Now, I've been around enough to know when something's been glossed over, and this here is no exception. Back in the day, we were told that the motorcade was a fortress on wheels, a secure bubble designed to keep the president safe. But these new files paint a different picture. They show that there were significant lapses in the planning. For instance, internal memos hint that the route was modified at the last minute without proper consultation with security experts. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're responsible for protecting the president, a last-minute change sounds like a recipe for disaster. Let's break it down. Inadequate security briefings. The files indicate that many of the local agents weren't fully briefed on the modifications. They were left in the dark about key details, almost like they were expected to wing it. Route vulnerabilities. Maps and annotations in these documents reveal that the new route had several blind spots, areas where potential threats could have been lurking. Chain of command issues. There's evidence of internal friction among security teams, with last-minute disagreements on how to implement these changes. Now, I ain't no conspiracy nut, but when the folks responsible for your safety can't agree on a plan, you gotta wonder if someone higher up had a hand in this, or if it was just careless planning. And if you think that sounds like a case of Houston, we have a problem, you're right on the money. I've been studying how our security protocols evolved over the years, both in this country and abroad. And let me tell you, the more I learn, the more I'm convinced that what happened on that day wasn't just a series of unfortunate events. There were decisions made under pressure that, in hindsight, seem downright reckless. Now, I remember a conversation with a former agent, can't recall his name now, who once said that every change in a security plan is a potential crack in the armor. Well, that crack might have been just wide enough to let in more than a stray bullet that day. Now, let's move on to the second big revelation. For decades, Lee Harvey Oswald has been the central figure in this tragedy, and most of us were fed a single-story narrative about his lone wolf status. But these new files suggest that there was more to his background, something that ties him closer to intelligence circles than we ever imagined. Dig in with me here. The documents show that Oswald had contacts with certain elements within our intelligence agencies. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying he was a secret agent, but there are records of meetings, phone calls, and even travel logs that hint at a relationship, one that was kept under wraps for decades. Here's what stands out. First, unexplained travel records. Some travel itineraries show Oswald moving in circles that would raise eyebrows today. Routes that mirrored those of known intelligence operatives. Could be coincidence, but in our line of work, it ain't just luck. Next, suspicious correspondence. There are snippets of correspondence that mention names and code names linked to intelligence work. Now, folks, when you see code names in a file like this, you know someone was trying to hide something in plain sight. Financial anomalies. Even more intriguing, there are records of unexplained financial transactions that don't add up, money moving through shadowy channels that might have been used to pay for covert operations. For a retired vet like me who's seen how covert operations are planned and executed, these details suggest that Oswald wasn't acting entirely on his lonesome. They might not prove a direct conspiracy, but they certainly make you question if he was, in fact, a pawn in a much larger game. Now, I've always believed that the man behind the gun doesn't exist in a vacuum. When you see travel logs and financial records that hint at covert connections, it raises a lot of questions. I've heard it said in military circles that sometimes the enemy isn't always who you think it is. And in this case, the enemy might have been working from within our own ranks. I'm not here to point fingers without proof, but the evidence in these files sure makes you wonder if Oswald was just a convenient scapegoat for a much bigger, darker design. All right, friends, let's talk cover-ups. This is where things get downright sticky. The third revelation from these new files is a treasure trove of internal communications, memos, emails, and notes that point to a concerted effort to hide the full truth from the public. Here's what I've been able to piece together. There are multiple memos that show different departments, FBI, CIA, even local law enforcement, had conflicting reports on the day of the assassination. Instead of sorting out these discrepancies, higher-ups opted to bury the more explosive findings. Several pages in these files have been blacked out, but the context of the surrounding text suggests that certain details were deliberately omitted from public records. It's like someone was saying, "Don't look here. This ain't for your eyes." Perhaps the most damning evidence comes from internal debates documented in these files. Officers were arguing fiercely about the validity of their own findings. One officer even wrote, "If the public ever knew the full extent of our internal disagreements, our credibility would be shot." Now that tells you something about what they were trying to hide. We've all seen what happens when bureaucracies get their hands on sensitive information. There's a natural tendency to tidy up the narrative, sometimes at the expense of truth. I've read these memos over and over, and each time I see hints of dissent and internal strife, it's like watching a group of men in uniform arguing over the smallest details, details that in another context could mean life or death. And believe me, when your country's leadership chooses silence over transparency, it leaves a scar that can't be healed overnight. I gotta say, folks, it's hard to swallow. When you find out that those entrusted with safeguarding our nation were busy sweeping inconvenient truths under the rug, it makes you wonder what else might have been covered up. And while I'm not one to jump to conclusions without evidence, these internal battles certainly add fuel to the fire. Now let's move on to revelation number 4, one that's as delicate as it is revealing. These documents bring to light previously overlooked witness testimonies and reveal that some crucial pieces of evidence were intentionally left out of the original public reports. You see, a lot of folks remember that day as a moment frozen in time, a moment where every detail was etched in our collective memory. But these files show that there were dozens of eyewitness accounts that never made it into the official narrative. Here's the breakdown. Several witnesses, many of them everyday citizens and local business owners, provided statements that contradict the official version of events. Their accounts hint at additional suspicious activity around Dealey Plaza. There's mention of physical evidence, photographs, audio recordings that were either lost or purposefully omitted. In one instance, a security camera's footage was mysteriously corrupted just days before it could be analyzed by an independent committee. Some of the files include references to officers being warned off by higher-ups. One memo reads like a cautionary note. Remember who you're working for, suggesting that these witnesses were pressured to keep quiet. It pains me to think that ordinary citizens, good, hard-working folks, were sidelined in the official reports. These witnesses had stories that could have painted a fuller picture of that day. Some of them were scared out of their wits, and rightfully so. Imagine standing on the streets of Dallas, witnessing something so shocking, and then being told that your words don't matter. That's not the mark of a free society. And yet, here we are with gaps in the record that beg the question, who decided which voices would be silenced, and why? And finally, we come to the fifth and perhaps the most controversial revelation, a revised timeline that not only tweaks the chronology of that tragic day, but also opens up new doors to conspiracy theories that were previously dismissed as wild speculation. Now, listen here. These files contain charts, maps, and time-stamped logs that suggest events unfolded in a way that contradicts the official timeline we've been taught. Let's break this one down. The documents show that there were overlapping events and simultaneous activities that don't quite add up. For example, certain communications between security personnel were logged at times that suggest they were dealing with more than just a routine motorcade operation. There are gaps, blank spaces in the timeline, where nothing was recorded. Now, I don't know about you, but if you see blank spots in a record that should be detailed, you gotta ask, what were they trying to hide? With a revised timeline, the possibility emerges that there might have been additional players involved on that fateful day. While I'm not here to claim that a full-blown conspiracy was orchestrated by shadowy figures, these discrepancies lend credence to the idea that not all the pieces of the puzzle were placed where they should have been. It's enough to make a patriot like me question whether our government did its due diligence in the aftermath, or whether it was more interested in putting a neat bow on a tragic event, regardless of the cost to truth and accountability. Let's pause for a moment and talk about evidence. In our line of inquiry, whether you're a historian, a patriot, or just a regular citizen trying to piece together our past, evidence is the cornerstone of truth. These new files come with notations, redactions, and sometimes even coded language that suggests there was more going on behind the scenes than we were led to believe. You see, in the military, we learn to question orders that don't add up. And in our democracy, we should be doing the same with official narratives. When you find multiple accounts that contradict each other, when you see deliberate redactions on crucial points, that's a red flag. And if you're paying attention, you'll realize that the truth is often messy, and sometimes intentionally so. I won't stand here and claim I've uncovered every secret, but these documents offer enough breadcrumbs to suggest that a full accounting of that day has yet to be told. And that, my friends, is a call for continued investigation and dialogue. Now, I know some of y'all out there might think, Duke, aren't you going too far? And I get it. I'm a patriot, too. I love this country with every fiber of my being, but loving your country means holding it to the highest standards, even when it stings a bit. It means acknowledging that our government, while built on noble ideals, is run by fallible humans who sometimes make mistakes or, dare I say, decide to cover up inconvenient truths. This isn't about attacking our institutions. It's about ensuring they remain true to the principles that make America great. We owe it to our forefathers and to ourselves to demand nothing less than transparency and accountability. And for those who might label this as too out there or conspiracy talk, remember, history is full of surprises. Sometimes the real story is far more complex than the neat little narratives we're fed. It's up to us to peel back the layers and get to the heart of the matter. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a call for vigilance. It's a reminder that while our nation stands tall on the ideals of freedom and justice, we must never stop questioning, never stop seeking the truth. Whether you're a lifelong patriot or a skeptic of authority, I challenge you to take these revelations, mull them over, and join in the dialogue. Because in the end, an informed citizenry is the backbone of our great republic. So what does all this mean for us? Now, I'm a firm believer in our great American institutions, but I also know that no system is perfect. These revelations from the new JFK Files force us to reconsider a story that's been told for decades. They suggest that there were errors, misdirections, and, dare I say it, deliberate obfuscations that have kept the full truth from emerging. For those of you who, like me, are proud defenders of American ideals, these revelations are a call to keep asking questions, even when the answers are as messy as our history sometimes is. And while I might sound a bit rough around the edges, maybe even a tad jaded by bureaucracy, I believe in the power of open dialogue and transparency. Now, let's have a little heart-to-heart. I know that for some, these new revelations might confirm suspicions they've harbored for years. For others, it might be a shock to the system. But here's the thing. Questioning authority and demanding accountability is what makes America the land of the free. It ain't about tearing down our institutions. It's about making sure they work the way they're supposed to. And I believe in a strong America, but I also believe in a truthful America. And if that means questioning old narratives and digging deep into our history, then so be it. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to demand answers, to push for transparency, and to never settle for half-truths. So, here's my call to y'all. Let's keep the dialogue open. Read the files, ask questions, and if you're inclined, share your thoughts. Our history is our heritage, and we must guard it as fiercely as we guard our freedom. And while some may label this kind of talk as controversial, maybe even a little offbeat, I say it's time we stop sugarcoating the truth. I want to remind you that these new documents are just one piece of the puzzle. There's more out there, and it's up to every one of us to keep digging, keep asking, and keep fighting for a clearer picture of our past. And remember, in a free country like ours, every question counts. I remember back when I was on duty, seeing firsthand how decisions made in shadowy back rooms could mean life or death on the front lines. And while I'm proud of my service, I also know that sometimes the men in uniform and the men in power don't always tell you the whole truth. That's why these revelations hit close to home for me. They remind me that accountability isn't just a slogan. It's a duty every American owes to our great nation. Some folks out there, let's be honest, might not like how I call a spade, and I get it. America is a melting pot and opinions differ. But here's the bottom line. I'm not here to pander. I'm here to speak my mind, and I trust that if you're listening, you're smart enough to sift through the noise and get to the facts. As I wrap up this episode, thank you for joining me on this journey through the newly released JFK Files. I encourage you to check out the documents for yourself, do your own research, and share your thoughts. I want you to remember, our history isn't set in stone. It's written by those brave enough to question the status quo. So keep your minds open, your questions sharp, and your love for this great country unwavering. This is Duke Dallas signing off for today, reminding you that the truth is out there, sometimes hidden in plain sight, and it's up to us to uncover it. And if you want to fuel this fight, head over to our Patreon. Links in the description. Every dollar keeps us uncanceled and unfiltered. We're taking this country back, one patriot at a time. Stay strong, stay loud, and stay tuned. This is Duke Dallas, signing off. God bless y'all, and God bless America.